Hello and welcome to Penalty on the Podcaster Overtime, the weekly XFL and now USFL predicting podcast. This week predicting week 10, yes, the last week of the regular season for the XFL 3.0 and week 2 of the 2023 USFL season. Before we get started, just a few messages. Disclaimer, this is for entertainment and educational purposes only. It is not gambling advice. I truly mean that. I am absolutely not responsible for any money that was lost or was lost while gambling on things said in this podcast. Also, this podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, RSS, and Google Podcasts. The link to all the other platforms will be in the description wherever you are listening. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. Help the channel grow. Costs nothing. Takes about a second, and you can always change your mind later. And make sure to ding that bell on YouTube or follow on Spotify or whatever other platform to never miss an episode. I'm putting out some more episodes now, especially Penalty on the Podcaster. I Just Want to Talk episodes. Those can be found on the same YouTube channel in a different playlist, and they can be found on the same page for Spotify, RSS, and Google Podcasts. Some great episodes on there, like talking about Jalen Hurts and his new contract. Should Tua Tagovailoa retire? The Bears offseason. My thoughts on the Denver Broncos Russell Wilson situation, and Trey Lance is overrated. Those are all the ones that are still relevant, but there are more coming out soon. Another thing is this podcast is not sponsored. If you would like to sponsor this podcast, my email is in the description. And if you want to contact me for whatever reason, my email is in the description. And so also a new message. The best thing you could do to help this podcast grow right now is to just spread the word. If you have a friend who likes football, maybe just say like, hey, there's this podcast you should try out. Really, word of mouth is something that would really grow the show. So just spread the word. Tell friends who like football about this podcast. And it's really the best thing you can do right now. And of course, it's free. So, all right, let's get started. Starting with the XFL, Orlando Guardians at St. Louis Battlehawks. Battlehawks by a mile. I predict AJ McCarron to throw 2 touchdowns. They're just such a good team, so much better than the Guardians, who I think their quarterback is Paxton Lynch, or maybe they got rid of him. But just everything aside, Paxton Lynch is terrible. But yeah, Battlehawks by a mile, like 32-17. Defenders at Brahmas. Defenders. I predict Fred Brown catching at least 1 touchdown. And Jaquez Patrick rushing for at least 1 touchdown on the Brahmas side. But I predict Jordan Tom throwing 2 touchdowns, rushing for at least 1. And I predict Abram Smith rushing for at least 1 touchdown. I predict a 31-28 win for the Defenders. But the Brahmas did stretch things to overtime last game. Oh, you know what? I forgot, but normally I review last week's slate of games and go to this week's. So, sorry about that. Let's go back. Last week, week 9, Vegas Vipers at Roughnecks. Roughnecks won by less of a margin than I expected. San Antonio beat the Guardians because the Guardians are a terrible team. But it was kind of a close game. DC beat Arlington as expected. And, unexpectedly, the Dragons beat the Battlehawks. Okay, back to week 10. Yeah, so I predict a 31-21 beatdown from the Defenders. Well, technically 31-21 isn't a beatdown, but I still predict that to be the score when the clock hits 0 in the fourth quarter. Roughnecks at Renegades. I predict that the Roughnecks will win, absolutely. Brandon Silvers is a great quarterback. Their receiving core is amazing, so I predict Brandon Silvers throwing at least 3 touchdowns. For the Renegades, I predict Sal Cannella catching at least 1 touchdown. And I predict that the Roughnecks will win. I mean, all the XFL games have been close, so 21-18. And then finally, Vipers at Sea Dragons. I predict the Dragons to win because they're just a better team, and the Vegas Vipers are horrible. I predict Ben DiNucci throwing at least 3 touchdowns because he's been dethroned, but I think last I checked, he's the best quarterback in the league. So I predict him throwing 3 touchdowns for a 24-6 game for the Sea Dragons. And that's the last week of the XFL regular season. The division championships will be the Roughnecks and Defenders. They've already clinched their spot. And then it will be between the Renegades and Brahmas to go to the South Division Championship, and between the Battlehawks and Sea Dragons to go to the North Division Championship. Alright, that will do it for the XFL. Now moving on to the USFL. The USFL, I think, is the better league here. Like, when I watched week 1, it was like, this is actual football. Like, the XFL was okay. It was a good placeholder. The USFL feels so much more like real football, better. And, it's just more quality football. That's really all I can say. So, last week, week 1, Philadelphia at Memphis. Memphis, I predicted them to lose, but they put on a true fight. Like, they had a chance against, as a new team, sort of new. They're actually, most of the people are from the Tampa Bay Bandits, who no longer exist. But they lost Jordan Tama, who's been doing very well in the XFL. They put up a real fight against the runner-ups from last season. So I think they could do very well, and they can win against any team that's not the champion or runner-ups from last season, which is really cool. I expected more of a beatdown. I was hoping they would win because, Memphis hasn't had football since, since the Oilers? So, or was it the XFL in the 80s? But they haven't had football in a very long time, so it's nice to see that Memphis has a football team. So I was rooting for them. They lost, of course, but they really made it difficult for the runner-ups. And then New Jersey at Birmingham. Birmingham definitely, they won. They completely destroyed the, I forgot their name, Generals. The Generals. And then the Maulers lost to the Breakers, and the Panthers beat the Gamblers. The Gamblers are, or did I mix that up, the opponents? The Gamblers are a really bad team. The Panthers beat the Gamblers. The Gamblers were bad last season, and it looks like they're continuing it. Pittsburgh at New Orleans. New Orleans won because New Orleans is just a superior team. And so, moving on to week 2, Houston at New Orleans. Of course, New Orleans is going to win because it's a better team. They are just a better team. I don't think the Breakers have Kyle Sloter. They might. No, they do not have Kyle Sloter or Sal Cannella. Sal Cannella is in the XFL, and I think Kyle Sloter went to the XFL as well. So they have Akil Glass, David Cheek, and McLeod Bethel Thompson at quarterback. And at running back, they have Anthony Jones. And at wide receiver, they have D. Anderson. At tight end, they have E.J. Bibbs. Eli Stove, also at wide receiver. Ezra Gray at running back. If I listed the whole roster, I would be here forever. So, yeah, I do predict the Breakers to win against such a bad team. So, I predict the Breakers to win like 27-14. And then Memphis Showboats at Birmingham. Oh man, the Showboats got the runner-ups, and now they're going against the champions. Now, Jamar Smith is out for the Stallions, which honestly I think is a good thing. I'm not a huge fan of Jamar Smith. I really like Alex McGough. Jamar Smith is he's not as good. He's much less accurate and makes some worse decisions. Of course, he threw a great bomb, but still, that does not make him a good quarterback throwing one pass. Anyway, I predict that the Stallions, I forgot who their quarterback. Oh yeah, I've slipped my mind for a second. Alex McGough. I predict he will throw 2 touchdowns in this game. Unfortunately, Bo Scarborough is out. CJ Marable, though, is in, and I predict him rushing for at least 1 touchdown. Jamar Smith is out for the season. Oh, hey, they have Kyle Sloter. Marlon Williams is out, tore his Achilles in a bad non-contact injury, which just sucks. He was doing so well, but the injuries really were bad for the Stallions last game, with their star receiver being out in Marlon Williams, and then their star linebacker, Scooby Wright III, whose actual name is Philip Wright. Fun fact. He is also injured and out, but it still stands. I predict the Stallions to win because, like, their defense is still really, really good. Like, the pass rush and everything. The Showboats put up a show, and I predict Brady White throwing at least 1 touchdown, but I'm not predicting that much. I'm predicting the Stallions winning 24-10. No, to 13. They're just a better team. They know how to win. And then New Jersey at Pittsburgh. This game will be played in Canton, Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, and I predict that the Generals will win because the Maulers are horrible, and like that's just an inescapable fact right there. The Generals quarterbacks, though, they did pretty well. I think Dakota Prukop especially did really well. DeAndre Johnson did pretty well. And Darius Victor, they described him as a bowling ball, and he really is. So I predict Dakota Prukop throwing at least 1 touchdown. I predict Darius Victor rushing for at least 1 touchdown. And I predict Cam Eccles-Looper catching at least 1 touchdown. I predict DeAndre Johnson also throwing at least 1 touchdown. And yeah, this team and the offensive line is so good. And I predict that the Maulers will get 0 sacks. They did so well against the Birmingham defensive line, which led the league in sacks last season. So, yeah, I definitely predict New Jersey to win this. Now, the Maulers have Connor Sampson at quarterback and Troy Williams. Yeah, I don't know too much about them, but yeah, I predict the Generals winning maybe 20 to 10. I don't really know much about the Maulers except they're terrible. And then there is Michigan at Philadelphia. Philadelphia was really good. This one will also be played in Canton. And Case Cookus looks really good. Chris Rowland is great as a dual threat runner and receiver. So this is really good. And then they do have Matt Colburn, who is a great running back too. So this is a really good team. And then they also have the best cornerback in the XFL, Channing Stribling, who can lock basically anyone down and come up with an interception. So I predict Matt Colburn rushing for at least 1 touchdown. I predict Chris Rowland catching at least 1 touchdown. And I predict that Case Cookus throws at least 2 touchdowns. He had a stint with the Rams, though, as practice squad, Case Cookus. And I predict Channing Stribling catching at least 1 interception. And, yeah. And they're really a good team. And then Michigan is coming off a win, but if they're anything like last season, they're bad. Carson Strong is their quarterback. I think he was on the Eagles practice squad, but they also have Eric Barriere and Josh Love. So I don't know who's starting for now, but I mean, Carson Strong sort of has NFL experience, but unless this is the wrong Carson Strong I'm thinking of. But yeah, I predict Philadelphia to win 28 to 14. They're a really good team. Like, there's a reason they made it to the championship, and they came close, but they did not win the championship because Birmingham are the champions. But they did really well, and so that's why I predict them winning. So that's all there is for this episode. Again, if you'd like to contact me for whatever reason or sponsor this podcast, it's unsponsored. My email is in the description. If you'd like to listen to this podcast on another platform, we are on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and RSS. Links in the description for the other platforms. If you're on Spotify, RSS, and Google Podcasts, it will have the link for that platform along with the other ones. And if you're on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Help the channel grow. Takes a second. Costs nothing. You can always change your mind later. Make sure to ding that bell or follow or do whatever so you never miss an episode. Please spread the word and tell someone about the podcast, someone you think would actually listen. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this installment of Penalty on the Podcast or Overtime. You'll hear more of me next episode.